Hello guys and welcome to today's video. In this video, we are going to talk about how to create pivot tables in MS Excel. So for those who are not yet familiar with what pivot tables are, this is a tool in MS Excel that allows you to analyze, present data in a very fast way. So if you have a large data like this and you want to derive information out of this data, then you can efficiently do that using pivot tables. Now, the first step of pivot tables is, of course, you must have your data source with you. And this data source must be a nicely captured data. Here, they are arranged in columns or tabular form, and the datum under each of the columns are nicely captured. There are no wrong spellings, there are no unnecessary spaces. So you could say that it's perfect, okay, for your report. Now, once you're ready with your data, the first thing you have to do is click any one cell within the range of cells. Now, once you click any of the cells, you have to go to the Insert tab, and under the Insert tab, on the leftmost side, in most Excel versions, you should see there Pivot Table. So click that, and you will get the Create Pivot Table dialog box. From here, you need to check if you were able to capture the correct range of cells, which it will usually do if only if you just click any one cell within the range of cells that you're going to convert into a pivot table. Next, you have to identify if you're going to create the pivot table in a new worksheet or in an existing worksheet, like maybe you want to insert that report somewhere here on the right side of the table. Now, I personally recommend using new worksheet because you really do not want to cram all your reports, your data source, your tables in just one worksheet. So better click new worksheet. And as you could see, we almost did not do anything in this pop-up. You just have to click OK from here. And then Excel will create a brand new worksheet. In this brand new worksheet, you have two parts. You have the blank pivot table on the left side, and you have the pivot table fields pane on the right side. The pivot table fields pane is composed of two parts. You have your fields and you have your area. So the fields actually corresponds to the columns of your report. So as you could see here, we have transaction, we have date booked, we have package, we have customer name, and you could see that that actually came from our data source. So each column here is represented in your pivot table fields pane. Now, the next thing you have to do is to drag these fields towards the area where you want them to show up. So for example, I want to see the different salesperson. I will drag that field, as in literally drag that field, the name salesperson, and you will see that your cursor will have the title being dragged around. You need to drag it towards the area that you want it to show up. And since this is more of like names, it's either you put them under rows area, wherein they will be arranged in rows, or you arrange them as columns. So there's really no right or wrong when it comes to where you want to put the fields, but this one looks a little bit awkward. Whenever we create reports, usually we're used to seeing the report arranged in rows like this. But I'm not saying that the columnar version is wrong. It's just it's not that right. And of course, you need to drag another field because a pivot table at least requires two fields for it to make sense. And this field would be a field containing a number. So for this one, we're looking for the amount field or column. Just like what we did with the salesperson field, we will drag that field under values. And as you could see, the amounts showed up in our pivot table on the left side. We now have a summary of how much these salespeople earned, okay, out of this data. You did not do any calculations at all. All you had to do was to insert a pivot table and then drag fields in order to lay out or design your report. You can even bring in more fields if you want. So, for example, we can also bring in package and drag it in another area in your report. So maybe we could put it here under columns, and you will see that the packages are now arranged, okay, in a columnar manner. So the sales people are now broken down into their respective packages that they sold. Now, again, the design of this report is totally up to you. Just remember that anything that you do here in the area will also happen in your pivot table report. So let me mark this field columns. They showed up here. And then we have our salesperson, which showed up here. And you see how the report actually simply reflects that. So anything that you do here on the right side happens on the left side as well. You can drag fields to different areas. For example, I could also bring in package and drag that field under salesperson. And you will see that that movement in the area caused changes in the pivot table on the left. If you decide that you want to swap the packages versus the salespeople, then just do it in the areas as well. So here we have the packages. Let me expand this so you can see it. And drag it above the salesperson field. And watch how the pivot table on the left transitions to that layout. So pivot tables are flexible to the point that you can bring in fields. You can bring in more fields if you want. For example, we can also bring in date booked in our columns. And your latest versions of Excel should automatically group dates into months. Well, depends. Sometimes if you have a very long range of dates, you would even get a grouping that is based on the year. Now, let's add more accessories to our pivot table. Let's make it a little bit more interactive because right now it's quite static, right? If that's it, it ends there. Click any cell in your pivot table and then go to Analyze. Under Analyze or Pivot Table Analyze, you should see there Insert Slicer. This is a nice way to interact with your data. So click that and you will be asked what kind of slicer you want to show up in your report. So let's say that I want to click or I want to create a slicer out of payment method. So check that payment method and then click OK. You will now notice that you have this object floating around your worksheet. And this is a slicer. So it allows you to sort of slice your data. That's why it's called slicer. You can click on the fields and watch as the report updates, showing only the data that is connected to the payment method that I just clicked. So it makes your report interactive. And you also now have this option to filter your report based on a certain payment method. You do not have to like create a report just for cash or just for this kind of payment method, Dragon Pay, for example. If you decided to show all the payment methods again, then just click on this red X, okay, so that it will show everything again. Now, this is our basic pivot table. And just a reminder about it, whenever there are changes in your data, your pivot table will not automatically update. So if you made some edits, let's say I'm going to bring in another salesperson here. Let's bring in James. You will notice that the pivot table will not reflect this change. You have to do something first. You have to right-click on any cell within the pivot table and then click Refresh. And watch as James joins the 100 Islands tour here, okay, with the amount that is assigned to that entry that we edited. So another way is to use or go to analyze and then change data source. This will also allow you to refresh the data so that it can detect changes. But the change data source is more powerful than refresh because refresh will only detect changes within the original data range that we used the pivot table with. If you added more rows or if you added more columns to your data source, refresh will not pick it up. You have to go to that analyze, change data source, and then you can now edit the data source range of cells that you see there. And then click OK if ever there are changes to that data source. Now, there you have it. That's our basic pivot table. So I hope to see you in the next video so that we could discuss how to create more complicated tasks in pivot table, like creating calculations within the report, forcing certain groupings, and so on. But for now, this is where we'll end our video, and I hope you hit the like and the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.